what an amazing weekend to just celebrate, you know, everything that it stands for. And just want to welcome everybody to the call again. We just appreciate your patience. And this morning we've got a special know what kind of resource this Friday webinar has been for every one of you. And it's an honor this morning to welcome and introduce all of you to a gentleman that a lot of you do know, Mr. John Drennan. He is a Millionaire Club member, a Silver Executive Director out of the Louisville market. And we're excited for John joining the call this morning, and for every one of you for the content and for what the message is going to be. It is probably one of the strongest resources, one of the strongest tools that we've got in building our Legal Shield business. And Mr. Drennan was asked to be one of our guest speakers at the leadership conference that just happened in Dallas. And I got to tell you, it's one of the most talked about trainings that happened that weekend amongst all of the leadership in this great company, Legal Shield. The content, the delivery, and just the message of purpose in respect to the simplicities of how we can build the business and utilize such an amazing tool. So it's an honor to go out this morning to the Louisville market and welcome to this call our trainer this morning, Millionaire Club member, Mr. John Drennan. John? Trish, you want to make sure his line is not muted?
Working on it.
John, did we lose you? I see you're on there. Did we lose the network connection? Is that what it's saying?
It's telling me that he's on. I'm texting him right now. So, hold on.
All right. In the meantime, while that's happening, just a quick FYI for everybody, this coming Tuesday, I'll be in Charlotte, North Carolina as part of the 6-city tour. So Charlotte, North Carolina, if you have any business in that marketplace, I know Bob Cohen will be joining me, but the long distance package, you know, everything with the 10 core, just the opportunity to build a global business with Legal Shield is as strong as it's ever been. And I got a message on yesterday from Mr. Jeff Bell, our CEO. What are we in? March. March was the strongest month since 2005, I believe is what he said. So not only are we moving in the right direction, but we wrapped up a record fourth quarter in 2014 and have now kicked off and in the process of, you know, setting up a record first quarter for 2015. Also, if you're taking notes, just April 18th, I'll be in Fort Lauderdale. So whether it's Charlotte or Fort Lauderdale, if there's anything that we can do for you or for any team members, be sure to plug them in. And that's just my travel schedule. The rest of the platinums and the leadership travel schedules are first class, so you can access and leverage basically any of the events throughout the North American marketplace. So be sure you look at that, be sure you're aware of it. And remember, it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with who you maybe know in Fort Lauderdale or Charlotte, but people on your team that know people in those markets. All right? So John,
can you hear me now, John?
There we go. John Drennan, great to have you, sir. And hopefully you got my amazing introduction. If not, the best of the best. Great to have you, sir.
Well, I did get the introduction, Mr. Hoffman. Thanks so much. And I was talking into the air and sharing that I am here in Louisville, waterlogged Louisville. We got pounded with rain the last 2 days. And but I'm here and safe and happy to be here. And welcome everyone here on Easter weekend and NCAA Finals weekend. That was always a big deal for me because for those that don't know me, I was a high school teacher and a basketball coach. And for years, my whole March and now early April was NCAA basketball. I used to attend the NCAA Finals, so I would have been on my way to Indianapolis here at one point in my life, but I left the teaching and coaching world I got into business. I owned business in Michigan, and I sold my last company in 1996. And in 1990, introduced to this amazing company, and I recognized immediately that we were the future of the legal industry. I did my due diligence. I got started with Legal Shield, back then prepaid legal, and what a blessing this company has been. If you are newer to the company, your timing is impeccable. If you've been around a long time, obviously the Hoffmans and me and others, it's been 17 years. We're more excited than we've ever been, and we call that a clue. So, and we know success leaves clues. If you're looking at Millionaire Club members who say these are the best times ever, you want to take advantage of that. So I want to commend everyone who's on today, and I also really want to commend John and Darcy Hoffman and Trish and the ShieldNation team for delivering such valuable content every single week with these webinars. So with that, my topic is luncheons, and that's appropriate. I estimate, since I got started in Legal Shield, I have been part of either hosting or speaking at well over 500 luncheons, actually approaching 1,000 luncheons. It's been a staple for me. My first 11 years, I built the business in the state of Michigan, and in 2009, my wife and I moved to Louisville, Kentucky, and the very first thing I did was put a luncheon in Louisville. So with that, we go ahead and advance the screen and get started here. And I want to start actually, you should see Michigan Circa 2000. Now back in about 2000, in the state of Michigan, we did executive luncheons once a month. But before I go into this, I want to start actually with a story that some of you can relate to, and it goes back to how I earned my way to be talking about luncheons today. Many, many years ago, well over a decade ago, I actually decided to start my own luncheon in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which was my hometown. I actually went to a hotel, and I arranged a room. I arranged with the kitchen to deliver plated luncheons to 12 to 15 people. I went to work making the phone calls. I only shared with a couple of associates the fact I was doing this luncheon because I felt back then, A, I wanted to prove the model, and B, as a leader, I felt like I had to go first and put this together and do one on my own. So it became the day of the lunch, and I got to the event, and I set up. I was there early. I set up my overhead projector, so that gives you an idea how long ago it was. And we had a noon start, and at 5 to 12, no one's there except the server and me. At noon and at 5 after, no one's there. 10 after, no one's there. Finally, 20 after, I told the server I was going to pack up and she could bring me the bill. And she brought me two things. She brought me a bill that was over $183, and she brought me a box. In the box was a chocolate cake, and she told me this was going to be dessert for the lunch and that I could take that home. So I wrote her a check for over $183 and took home the cake. And when my wife arrived later that day, I said, Lynn, here's the most expensive chocolate cake you'll ever see, so let's enjoy it. And, you know, we just had to laugh about it because it was a called strike. And so what did that teach me? Well, it got me on the road to teach me about luncheons. But again, back to the screen, we also back then in the state of Michigan, as an executive team, the leadership would host a monthly luncheon. We called it an executive luncheon. We would do this at an upscale venue, one that people would be attracted to, one that people would say, yeah, I'd love to have lunch there. And we would actually go out and sell tables, and it was usually the leadership and the team builders and the aggressive associates that would purchase tables of 8 seats, or they'd go in together and split a table, 4 each, but 8 seats was $120, $15 a head. And actually, that did two really great things. Number one, it brought in the money up front, so we didn't have to worry about being able to pay a venue that was enough. Secondly, it really created motivation for those who put money on the line to make sure those tables got filled. And the fact is they did get filled. We would average between 50 and 80 at these luncheons, and we would feature out-of-town speakers. And I remember John Hoffman was our speaker a couple times, as were people like the Amelias and other, current platinums. And we would do these luncheons on Friday as part of an overall Super Saturday weekend. We would use PowerPoint. Back in the old days, it was overheads, but we'd have music and PowerPoint, and it was a show. And the result was we had very good results. We'd have a high sign-up either that day or within days. We typically would have very impressive guests there, so it was kind of a high-level kind of event. So that was kind of the early start for me in luncheons. But then if you look at the slide, it says Michigan Circa 2008. What happened is many, many years ago, after having done the executive luncheons for years, I was in Dallas, Texas, with my friend Don Wilson. Most of you know him, at least by reputation, Millionaire Club member, six-figure ring earner out of Dallas. He asked me to speak at his weekly luncheon. I thought, wow, weekly, because I was used to monthly and my failed hotel cake experience. So I went to his luncheon, and it was at a kind of everyday Mexican restaurant in a small room, and they took orders. The serve staff took orders at noon. Don Wilson had let me know I'd have about 25 minutes. He gave me a couple laminates and brochures to use, and I just had a conversation with the people in the room. And there were, I believe that day we had 7 associates and 5 guests. And I spoke for 25 minutes. The food was brought out. And over lunch was really magic. That's where we talked to the guests. We answered their questions. We asked them what they liked best. And by the end of the lunch, they were all signing up. And I believe that day 4 signed up on the spot, 1 signed up the next day as members, and 2 became associates. And I was fascinated by that. I talked to Don Wilson. He said, yeah, we do this every week. We get 2, 3, 4, 5 memberships every week. So, if you take a look at the PowerPoint, it's a weekly luncheon overview at a practical, affordable venue, open to all associates in the market and their guests. Use local associates, maybe it's your Power 20s, your directors, or EDs as speakers, and use whatever you can use in a small informal setting, laminates, brochures, articles. And the fact is, the summary of that is weekly sign-ups. These luncheons on a weekly basis then feed the weekly briefing, and it's very easy and duplicatable. So when I left Dallas thinking, wow, it's a no-brainer. Why haven't I been doing this? And when I got back to Michigan, I immediately put a luncheon in my market, and then we expanded it. To this day, there's weekly luncheons throughout Michigan. When I moved to Louisville in 2009, as I said earlier, I did the exact same thing. The beauty about this informal weekly luncheon is if you get, like in the example of Don Wilson, if you're packing the room, and that room would only hold about 16 to 20, then what you do is you just add a second day. So now you do 2 luncheons a week with the exact same formula. So with that, what I want to do now is go into what is the formula that I have found that works. So let's start with the venue, and if you're looking at the screen, and maybe some of you aren't, so I'll go through the bullet points. Here's the venue guidelines. Number 1, it's got to be a place that's easy to find and easy to access. One time I had someone in Louisville say, hey, I got a venue I want to show you. Well, it was fairly easy to find, and it had good parking, but you had to go through a back door. It was kind of a lounge. It was dark, Then you had to find a stairway and go upstairs into a room that kind of felt dark and old. And I thought, no, this doesn't feel good. I mean, it's kind of hard. It's kind of dark. It's upstairs. You want everything as possible. So we said no to that venue. It's got to be easy to find, easy to access, easy to park, but it's got to have an attractive quality. The Mexican restaurant I went to with Don Wilson was great. It was the kind of place you'd go with your spouse. You know, they had a nice private room. It was well lit. It had a good feel. And it's got to have decent food. It doesn't have to be gourmet. It doesn't have to be great, but it's got to be decent. And then it's got to have a decent price point. Most markets you can get what I'm describing for $10 or less. I know some of you are scoffing at that because in your markets maybe you can't do that, but in most you can. So you want to have an $8 to $12 price point total to include tip and everything. You should never pay for a room. The negotiation should be, you know, you're bringing the people to lunch, you're introducing people to a restaurant they otherwise might not know about, so never commit to a room charge, but commit that you'll be there with people, $8 to $12 ideal. Make sure it's a private room. Now, definition of private, it's got a closing door, and when that door is closed, it's private. It shouldn't be a closing drape or curtain. It shouldn't be a half door. It should be private. The reason for that, number one, if it's not private, you've got the distraction of the rest of the restaurant flowing into your room. Number two, you've got the distraction of your room flowing out to the restaurant. So there's enough places with private rooms. Every now and then I've seen a place that's got a semi-private room, but it's off to a back part of the restaurant where they say, okay, we at lunch only use the front of the restaurant. We don't use the back. That can work, but again, it's got to be somewhere where other patrons are not aware of you and vice versa. One time I remember doing a luncheon in a big Mexican restaurant in New England, and we were seated right in the middle of the restaurant on a very busy day, and we had a long rectangular table with probably 12 people. It felt like the Last Supper here. And you know, I'm trying to talk to 12 people without talking to the entire restaurant. Very challenging. So again, private room. And next, you want to have a staff that's willing to work with you in terms of your guidelines. And the way I get that accomplished these days is if I'm talking to a restaurant, I say, look, I've been doing this for 17 years. I've done hundreds of these. They immediately then view me as the expert. Now, you might say, you know, our business has been doing this for 2 decades. We've done thousands of these, and that way they might give you a little more respect if you need that. Okay, let's talk about the process. So in working with the staff, we get pre-printed, simplified one-page menus. Now, in the last couple of weeks, I've done 3 or 4 luncheons. Each one had its own simplified menu. Today, we'll be at a Logan's Roadhouse here in Louisville. They have a private room. They've worked with us, and we've got a one-page menu taken from their main menu that offers basic things. You can get a burger. You can get a chicken sandwich. You can get chicken tenders. You can get a salad with chicken, a salad without chicken. You can get soup and salad. You can get a baked potato, sweet potato, steamed veggies. So we do have vegetarian options. We've got options for everybody. And they're all, by the way, it's great if you can get the restaurant to say, we'll put 6 or 8 things on the menu and have them all be the same price and make it like a flat $10 to include tip. In the case of today, each thing is priced differently. So you could go in and get a baked potato and steamed vegetables for about $6, or maybe a burger or a salmon or something for $10. So anyhow, but not a lot of options, and our people will fill out what they want. They'll circle it. They'll put their name on the top, and then everybody's orders are done. Now, back to the PowerPoint, the second point says everybody orders lunch. You know, these venues do a good job for us, so we don't want half the people in there saying, well, I'm not going to eat. And they're doing it to save money. I understand that. And on the other hand, these venues are an investment. So we say, hey, you can come to lunch and not eat, but you're going to contribute $10. We give that $10 to the server. Next, we ask our associates to be there by 11:45 with their guests, and by doing that, they get 11:50. But we need them there before noon because we start at noon. I want to take this moment to say, if you're around me, I am anal about starting on time and ending on time. It shows respect to your team, your market, and your guests. So when we say 12, we mean 12. So we have the servers collect the orders that people have written on the one-page menu at noon sharp. Now, sometimes it might be off a minute or two because the server didn't make it in the room, but we're picking up a little background noise there, Trish. Then we have our speaker talk for about 30 minutes using the placemats that were developed by Patrick Hodges and his team. And let's talk about the placemats for a minute. These are available now through a link, and it's on the back office or it's on the resource site. I simply go into Office Depot, pull up the site, pull up the link. I take in an existing placemat, what I've already had printed, so the Office Depot person can look at it, and I'll say, like, I want 30 of these. Now, I do not buy them laminated, but you could. I actually buy them on heavy stock glossy paper that's durable and can be used over and over and over. So recently, and this is a commercial for our benefits, but I went in to get 30 or 40 of these, and it came up at over $80, but after I swiped my Visa card that's connected to my Office Depot benefits, it dropped to $26. So that saved me over $50 right there, the benefits. So anyhow, that's what we use. So the speakers got 30 minutes with the placemat. Then our servers know to bring the food right around 12:30. It's usually closer to 12:35. And at that point, over lunch, the magic truly begins, because what we have found is this. Over lunch, it's kind of that event after the event. It's a chance to kind of let your hair hang down. Yes, we talk about Legal Shield and what the presenter just talked about, but we also talk about other things. So it's that chance to say, if I'm third party, maybe to ask a guest, now, how do you know the associate that brought you, and what's your background? Are you married? Do you have kids? Hey, based on what you saw today, what'd you like best? Did you see some ways you might utilize their service? And depending on how the conversation goes, it's pretty easy over lunch to guide that conversation to a point of saying, well, sounds like the membership is for you, and then either have an iPad or an application ready so that they can go ahead and enroll after they've completed their lunch. We get great enrollments that way. Now, I want to contrast that. For a couple of years, we were bringing in the PowerPoint every single Friday to lunch. But on the days we only had 5 or 6 people at lunch, it was really awkward having that equipment. Also, some days it was awkward getting the equipment there. If you're not in a market where multiple speakers have equipment, it can be a challenge to have that consistency. Plus, we found that with the PowerPoint, typically speakers, or how we used to do it, they'd speak up until like 12:55. And once they were done and lunch was over, people tended to leave, especially the guests. But since we've gone to the 30-minute placemat, we find that the 30 minutes then where we have lunch and talk tends to lead to an hour. The guests tend to stay. And it's amazing. We'll have a buzz in the room at 1:30, even though everything ended at 1 o'clock. So it's magic. And then the last point here, it is customary for associates to buy lunch for their guests. So that's how we do it. Now, I've advanced to the next page and just want to go through some other ideas and thoughts here. We don't want people walking in after 12. So if that becomes a problem in your market, you can create a sign that you put up at the door that says presentation in progress, doors will open at 12:30. Because if they're there late, let's say at 12:10, they can see, okay, I shouldn't interrupt, and they're opening the doors in 20 minutes, so I'll hang around. Secondly, you want to make sure there's no distraction. Now, in the venue we're at today in Louisville, they've got a TV in the room. We've got to make sure that's off. They got music throughout the restaurant. We've got speakers in that room are off. They got peanuts on every table. We get those out of there. Peanuts are a major distraction. They bring bread and butter to their typical customers. We tell them we're going to pass on the bread and butter. It's just more distraction. We want the servers in, picking up the orders. They do bring beverages up at the prior to noon, but once they've brought the beverages and picked up the orders, we want them out until we're done and the food's ready at about 12:35. We coach our people. Don't get complicated. Don't start asking for all kinds of extra stuff. If it's not on the menu, just keep it simple, folks. The speakers, when I'm a speaker, I don't hand out the placemat until I'm ready to use them. Here's my role as a speaker. I will get rapport with the audience for a minute or two. Like today, I would talk about the fact it's April, or it's rained a lot, or it's March Madness, or it's Easter weekend. I'd get some rapport. Then I'd say, I'm going to go ahead and hand out some information for you to follow. We do pick these up at the end, so please don't get ketchup on them. All the information on these will be available to you in other formats, so don't worry about being able to get the information. We're going to provide it all to you. That way we're getting back these and people aren't writing on them and messing them up. And then we'd like to have 2 prepared testimonies, one on the membership, one on the business, of about 20 seconds each. And then when we're done, we do collect the placemats while we give people options on where they can get additional information, your website, DVDs, et cetera, et cetera. Finally, we tip well. We ask our associates to be generous. We want to become the company and the organization that the staff looks forward to, not the one that they hide from. So be generous with your servers, and also don't try and recruit the staff in the venues we operate in. Think about it. If we're in there trying to recruit people that work at the places that are allowing us to come in, that's totally out of integrity. So, yeah, you can offer them the membership to sit down and talk about that, but don't try and recruit them. Next is, and I'm going to start wrapping up here, and then we can go to some Q&A, but engaging guests after the presentation. Most of you know this, but for the newer people, a great question to ask after any presentation is, hey, based on the things you heard, what'd you like best? Or what'd you like best about the membership that you heard? And as every chance possible, utilize third parties. So if you're at a luncheon with a guest and you're aware of someone who's maybe higher ranking than you, maybe you're a manager and there's a director in the room without a guest, ask them if they'd be willing to sit with you and talk to your guests afterwards, or if you can have an executive director in the room, introduce your guests for third party. Make sure you've got materials with you. Again, they're not taking the placemat, so have brochures, DVDs, applications, something to enroll with. Expect they're going to enroll because they're seeing great information. And I like to think of the presentation more as a conversation. That's one reason I like the placemats. To me, when you have PowerPoint, that says presentation, which I think is fitting for a big room of 50 plus over lunch. But if you have 12 people with 4 guests, I like to think more of a conversation, more informal, more, I'm not here to sell you, I'm here to converse with you. I'm not here to present to you. I'm here to have a discussion with you. So I like that mindset. And then sign-ups don't always happen at lunch. A lot of times people need to leave right away. They want to get with their spouse. They want to digest it. But be diligent in your follow-up. It's got to be 24 hours. And use a 3-way call, because every day you wait, they've forgotten half of what they got. So after 3 days, you're down to 12%. In wrapping up here with the last slide, Some people I know use luncheons as a networking event. They'll say, come at 11:30, bring business cards. It's a chance to network. We'll go around the room. You have a minute to share who you are. I know that works in a lot of markets. I'm not at all opposed to it. However, my personal belief is we're there for Legal Shield. The invitation's Legal Shield. We want you in and out with the goal of information over a decent lunch. Keep it simple. So I avoid the whole networking promotion, and I don't want to mislead people where they think they're coming to a general networking event and they end up with a Legal Shield presentation. So think that through. We do some theme luncheons. Once in a while, we'll do a luncheon just for insurance agents or financial planners or just for business owners to talk about the small business options or maybe decision makers of companies. But I know the business division, Business Solutions, has created great slides and resources for doing luncheons, so you can lean on that on the business side. And with that, last point, consider paying lunch for your new associates. A lot of times your new associates are doing this because they need money, and if they're faced with bringing 2 guests and having to pay $30 or $40 and they haven't earned anything, a good gesture for a new associate is to say, hey, for this first luncheon, I'll pay for your first 2 guests. You know, if you have 2 guests there, you buy your lunch, I'll buy for them. Or you might say, I'll buy for as many guests as you bring one time. So with that, I'll go ahead and close out my part by just sharing that luncheons are one form of doing business in Legal Shield. It's been my primary form, but I started with a PBR. I've done PBRs. I've done luncheon PBRs. When I do a PBR, oftentimes it's at a restaurant. I've done, I've utilized briefings and Super Saturdays and private conference calls and sit downs, and then tools. So it's good to have access to everything, but I've really kind of built my focus on luncheons. So that's why it was a pleasure for me to share. So with that, Mr. Hoffman, I'll go ahead and close my part and go back to you for any Q&A. Thank you for asking me to do this today.
Hey, John, as always, great job. Just the content rich, the delivery, and what, an important topic. Like Mr. Drennan, Darcy and I have utilized luncheons for over 20 years. And, John, before you go, I'm going to throw something back at you that I think is critical for everybody to hear. In the meantime, if anybody has a question, a comment, an aha moment in respect to the conversation, just go to the dashboard, click on the raise your hand part, and we'll come through, unmute your phone, and let you make the comment or question that you might like. And we're very fortunate, John, as you know, and everybody on the phone, that we have a very special business model. We're clearly differentiated in Legal Shield from the traditional business model in the direct selling industry. The fact that we can go out and complement those recruiting pools. You guys, whoever's on the speaker line might want to just mute out their background noise. The fact that we can go out and really work a recruiting pool that's available to us that isn't available to other companies from the professional side is unique and special. The fact that we can call on small business owners, offer the most requested voluntary benefit, work with insurance brokers and agents, as well as, on the direct sales side, build and leverage, the recruiting and marketing of a sales organization. So, John, one of the things that you mentioned, and I want to just get a little more specific with everybody on the phone, is that a size 10 does not fit all. In other words, if I were to look at John Drennan's background, if I were prospecting John Drennan as an example, the CEO of a company, background in coaching and teaching, my first exposure for Mr. Drennan probably wouldn't have been a business opportunity meeting on a Tuesday night. I would have utilized this type of a venue, this type of an exposure. And, John, how familiar should the speaker be with the guests that are coming into that room, and how important is it for us as speakers to speak to the entire model? In other words, and let me take it one step further, I'm always circulating with the associates, meeting the guests, just like you said, John, and I want to know what backgrounds. I want to know what type of people are in the room, because I believe I can communicate the entire aspect of how professional our model is and not get caught on one side or the other. So, John, just take a second, and how important is that for the speaker to speak to the backgrounds of all the guests in that room?
Well, great question. I'd actually like to take a couple minutes because I think your question involves a couple things. So before I zero in on that, you know, the luncheon we have today in Louisville at Logan's, you can get in and out for $8. I call that our middle class luncheon. Whereas Wednesday, we do an upscale $15 at a venue that people really, when they hear it, they go, oh, wow, yeah, I've never eaten there, or I've eaten there, it's great. And that's a smaller group. We do reservations with our associates, and that I call our upscale luncheon. So back to your point, I would have been, if you were prospecting me, probably the upscale lunch would have trumped the Tuesday night briefing, for example, exactly what you said. For the newer people on the line trying to get a luncheon started, I go back to the formula I just went through. But what Mr. Hoffman's talking about to me is gets into the subtleties. And I know we've got a lot of people on the line who have been doing luncheons a long time and who are very savvy. And so I do exactly what Mr. Hoffman's talking about when I'm a speaker. I try and know who are the guests in advance, or I meet them. I ask what's their background. Because if I'm in a luncheon and I know I've got an insurance agent, a financial planner, a realtor, you know, a stay-at-home mom, a construction worker, and 2 entrepreneurs, I'm going to be very cognizant throughout my presentation that I'm talking to each one and maybe even avoiding saying things based on who's in the room. And so I think this gets into, again, the more of the subtleties, but very important, especially when you're dealing with professionals in the room. So your theme might be general, but you've got 2 insurance agents. So then you guide the conversation more toward the idea that we have a general agency broker program, and that's a growing part of what we do, et cetera. So hope that addresses what you're asking. Back to you, sir.
Yeah, John, I appreciate it, and that's what we want to do. We want to complement and use stories that everybody in that room can relate to, and John, that's perfect. I know we've got Darcy. Darcy is in Florida, and Darcy, any comments and questions from you while we've got you?
Yes. First of all, I just love John's simple approach, and he is just explained it, such a valuable webinar. I believe he was the best speaker, in my opinion, in Dallas, Texas. He was phenomenal. Hope everyone got great nuggets today. What I want to add as the person that also brings the concept of franchise development, which means you always do the same special sauce in every Big Mac across the country all the time. The simpler you keep it, the more consistent you keep it, the better it is going to be. So one of the things for the people on the call that always hear about the Bob actually last week just talked about the Bob Cohen, the consumer folder. In the PBRs or the executive luncheon, you can use a consumer folder, and inside of it you put the associate compensation plan. It's almost the exact same thing as the placemat brochure, but then as I've taught over the last 6 months, the concept is if I'm presenting to an individual, I use the same tool as a family, as an insurance broker, as a broker, as a recruit, as a PBR, as an executive luncheon. If I can use the same tool exactly, every single presentation, HR director, enrollment at a company, and that's what we talk about when you go to ShieldNation on what to bring to a presentation. So I just want to make sure if you don't use the the placement brochure, which I love, by the way. And the only reason we don't use it is we want to use the same tool at every single division of LegalShield, so that I'm teaching a new associate how to use one tool that they can use, whether they're in front of a small business owner, HR, broker, insurance agent, recruit, small business, a family, an individual, or a PBR, or an executive luncheon. It is the exact same tool, exact same presentation all the way through. And of course, you'd add, according to the audience, a few things at an executive luncheon, but you would show, when you use the consumer folder, that this is also what we go to companies with. This is also what insurance agents use to present to their clients. This is also what we present to brokers. This is also what we present to families. This tool that you're looking at right now, that we're showing you the value of our product, and then you move over to the compensation plan by going to the associate comp. So I just wanted to say you can do both. Both are excellent for the people that are trying to have the same presentation in every division and the same tool, so people don't have to learn different presentations. You might want to take a note of that you can use either one. The other thing is the follow-up that John mentioned. So key about you go. I'm very big on R3 as well. So make sure in an executive luncheon, you're finding out the temperature, you're finding out the interest level of the person, but you're always, always R3. We are an R3 team, and that is going to explode your opportunities. So you're always moving past that person. You invited them. They know that they're there for this reason. You never limit yourself to the idea of R3 as well, even in an executive luncheon. So I'm teaching you R3 on every presentation. Remember it for executive luncheon as well. Who they know, start to paint that picture for them of the possibilities that they would have on the people that they're interested in as well. And make sure that that follow-up is there. So back to you, John.
Thanks, Darcy. Fantastic. And referrals to the power of three, R3 relates to exponential thinking, and you don't ever want to be a linear thinker. You want to be exponential, or looking out to not just who you know, but who they know. Jim Riley, I can call on you, but I think your phone's on mute. But Jim Riley, you've got your hand up. You might have to take your, there you go. Jim Riley, go ahead, sir.
Hi, John. Thank you. And John Drennan, thank you for that presentation. I was in Dallas at the ED conference, and it was very informative. It certainly got us thinking. Hey, the question I wanted to ask, especially in the professional luncheons that you have held, have you ever paid for the lunch yourself, meaning you invite insurance agents or insurance owners of companies, of independent insurance companies, financial planners, accountants, people that you know that you're holding a special event to come out there where you would cover that? The reason I ask that, because it is quite common in the professional space. You see it with financial planners, with elder law, with retirement seminars, where they do have an event and they do cover that and they invite you out. So I was just curious if you had any experience with that and what your feedback would be on that. Thank you.
John, you want to go first?
Yeah, and I want to clarify the question. Are you saying like do it at their location or for them?
No, actually, you would hold a luncheon, but you would pay for the luncheon yourself.
Yes. Couple examples. That was what I did when I bought the cake for $180. I was ready to pay for 15 people. My PBRs here in Louisville are actually luncheons, where I buy lunch for everyone when it's a PBR. And then when we have our, what I called our upscale luncheon, if I invite 2 insurance agents, I buy their lunch. And if, you know, other associates are there with other insurance agents, they buy their lunch. So the answer is yes, and I hope I answered it based on what you were asking.
You did, John. Thank you.
And Jim, let me piggyback it too. I'll just be, you know, whether it's a regular luncheon or like John talked about upscale, no matter, for 20 years, if I've invited you to a luncheon, I'm paying. You're my guest, and I pay for your lunch. I would never invite someone to lunch and then expect them to pick up their bill. You know, and so hopefully that makes sense, whether it's, you know, a big one. And we, the Hoffmans, like the Drennans, we've never done a PBR in our home. It just hasn't been something we've been comfortable or felt was a fit for us. But we believe in PBRs. We believe in the leverage of numbers, whether it's an executive breakfast. I did a tremendous breakfast up there with Ron Chambers and the team in Cincinnati. Or whether it's a luncheon, or whether it's conference calls, there are times we'll put 3, 4, 5, 6 people on a conference call because we've got that many people in our pipeline. All right? At the same time, you know, we'll put the numbers of 4 or 5 people into a luncheon and things like that. So, Jim, great question. Appreciate it. Any of other six-figure ring earners or millionaire club members have a comment or a question? And put up any other questions from anybody out there in the marketplace. Who'd I hear? Is that you, Bob?
John? Yep. Hey, real quick, John. I love the chocolate cake story. Just that's this business, folks. You got to roll with it, and I'm sure you guys enjoyed it. Here's my take on the executive lunches. I absolutely love them. Like you've been hearing on the call, I've built a huge business. It's so normal just to simply invite somebody to lunch, to a business lunch, and that's exactly what this is. Here's the good news: is most of these lunches are already taking place in the bigger markets. That's the good news. You just need to just plug right into it. You don't have to put your credit card on the line. You don't have to scout out a location. So we may have all different types of associates listening in today. That's the good news. Just make sure you go to LegalShieldCalendar.com and check out where a local luncheon is going on in your neck of the woods. Here in Raleigh, they've been doing them for Fridays. It's a standard place. It's a networking type format, and it's very, very simple. In fact, today, guess where I'm going to be in about in an hour, heading out to our executive lunch, and it's really simple, folks. You're out and about. You're meeting people. I always like to ask people when I follow up. I grab their card. We build rapport. Right? James Bond, calm, cool, collected. When I follow up a couple days later, I ask them, where we met again, remind them. But then I say, hey, do you ever like to promote your business? And what's a business person going to say to that? Of course. Well, my company's sponsoring a lunch. The networking's free. Lunch is, around $10, $11. Would love to have you come out. And that's exactly what I'm doing. In fact, I've got a lady today going to meet me. She works with seniors, senior housing and such, and so it's going to be a great opportunity for her to network, but then to learn about Legal Shield, because we are sponsoring the lunch, and we will sit down. I will have the consumer folder, and fill in some of the pieces. So again, how I look at the lunch, it's like a business. It's like how I look at it. It's like advertising. I account that $10, $11, whatever it may be, just like it's an advertising budget. I'm advertising my business. So just a couple points there that I, wanted to add. And John, real quick, I don't know, did you even share how do you invite people? I don't know if I heard that on the training today.
Bob, it's so amazing you're asking that, because when you started speaking, I realized when you mentioned you'll be at lunch today, I realized I didn't mention that. And while you were speaking, I just texted a prospect. One way I invite, I think it's, a lot of people want to invite a week in advance. I believe business people and busy people can easily cancel if something comes up. I like to invite the day of or the day before. I just texted somebody, I know it's short notice, but are you available for lunch today? And I'll continue to do that for another 15 minutes. And I know I'll hear back from people. If they get my text, I'll hear back. So I like to text the morning of, do you have lunch plans today? If they text back, no, why? Then I'll promote the speaker. Like today we've got Jim Harcum, a Millionaire Club member who's in Louisville. He's going to do our lunch. So I'm simply going to promote him. We got a gentleman from Michigan. I know his background. I can promote it. Can I buy you lunch? So, Bob, I like to start with the text. What are you doing for lunch today, or what are you doing for lunch on Tuesday, and then follow up that way. Keep it simple.
Very good. Fantastic. I heard either Darcy or Teresa. Were one of you guys trying to jump back in real quick, and this will be our last one?
Yes. It's Teresa.
Hey, Teresa. Great to have you. Go ahead.
Okay. Thanks, John. Listen, I wanted to make a comment in reference to the theme lunches where the gentleman asked about paying for the the agents or what have you. And those are great. When we do our themed luncheons, we provide the food. We just need them to come. Same thing with the decision makers. We do a luncheon for them. We just want them to come and get the information at that point. So that works extremely well, but I'm with you all. Always, if I invite you for a luncheon presentation, I'm covering that cost. I really like what you said, John, about I'm trying to talk fast because I know we're short on time, but I like what you said about paying for that new associate, helping them for that. I think that's a great gesture to do, to really get them into the flow of things. And then third, we strategically place our luncheons so that they can feed into the briefing. So if our luncheon is on the other side of town, but the briefing is on the opposite side, we try to have those luncheons strategically located in a place where it'd be easy for people to fold right in to that weekly business briefing in the evening if that's available for them. And my question to you, John, is buffet. What are your comments, your thoughts about having buffets? Can we incorporate that into the same system that you use, except for have people go to get their food at a later time? What are your thoughts there?
While you were talking, I just texted another prospect. But to answer the question, I don't like doing buffets for this reason. In the mindset of a guest or anybody, a buffet is where it's all you can eat. So you might go get salad and then you go get something else. Now you can always instruct people that, hey, we want you to go get your food now, and once everyone's gotten their food, then we'll get started. But then you've got people in line. It's just disruptive, has been my experience. So in my looking for a venue, I scratch buffets off as an option. Having said that, there's exceptions to everything. So back to you, John Hoffman.
And Teresa, I'm going to get a little bit more aggressive on this. I do not do buffets. As a matter of fact, if I'm asked to do a luncheon in a marketplace, I teach people how we do luncheons, and I tell them exactly what I expect. And there are 0 buffets if you want me to do a luncheon. Also, what John has talked about is something I've believed in, and Darcy and I have done for over 20 years, and that is, you know, the teas and the drinks are on the table, and as soon as 12 o'clock, you know, as soon as that minute hand strikes 12 o'clock, nobody else is in that room for 25 minutes. It isn't until about 25 to 30 after that they bring in everybody's lunch. It all comes in at the same time. The speaker is done, and that's like what Mr. Drennan talked about, when the magic happens and you're circulating and answering questions and carrying the conversation to the next level. So hope that helps. And with that, John Drennan, thank you so much. Amazing job as always, my friend. We appreciate your leadership and all that you do. Appreciate everybody who joined in this morning. May everybody have a happy Easter weekend. What a special weekend it is, and we appreciate this organization. And let's make April and kick April off in respect to the momentum we established not only in January, February, but certainly in a strong March. Thanks again, John. Be blessed, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.